Hello. Welcome everyone.
Morning, folks.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you all so much for joining us for part one of this exciting training series that the three of us here at WCASA have been working on for a while. This is day one of Navigating Digital Safety, a resource where we will be talking about both a toolkit that we, the prevention team at WCASA, made, as well as the ins and outs of what online digital safety means today, with concerns around sextortion, image-based sexual abuse. We'll be covering a whole lot of material for prevention folks, for advocacy folks. Um, all right. So looking at the chat, this is what we have coming up in the both today and on Thursday. So today, day one, we will be focusing on an overview of the resource that the prevention team at WCASA made, also known as our toolkit. We're going to be going over some important terms, so establishing a shared understanding of what image-based sexual abuse and sextortion is. We're going to take a break, make sure that you all get the opportunity to stretch your legs, take a bio break, grab a snack, and then we'll come back and discuss digital citizenship and digital consent. And then we'll go over the agenda for day two when we come back on Thursday. So let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. I've referred now to the WCASA prevention team a few times. I think for a lot of you, we're familiar faces, but there might be some new folks amongst us. So I'll start. Hello, all. My name is Sarah Lawden. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a prevention coordinator here with WCASA.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Railing. My pronouns are they, them, and I am also a prevention coordinator here at WCASA.
And I'm Megan Murray. I also use she, her pronouns, and I'm an evaluation coordinator at WCASA. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat as well, feel free to share your name, pronouns, and organization in the organization that you work for.
Thank you so much, Megan. I also want to give a heads up to folks that we are recording both sessions. So both today and the session on Thursday will be recorded. This is to help make sure that folks are able to access this information online afterwards. But just wanted to share that with all of you for transparency's sake. And we invite you to jump on and off camera to your comfort level. Just happy to have you here as active participants as we get going. All right, so let's get into it, right? Without further ado. What does engagement and safety online mean today? Well, we are more online than ever before. Airplanes have Wi-Fi, our cars do, our cell phones can host personal hotspots when the Wi-Fi signal's too weak. We're gaming, streaming, shopping, reading, communicating, watching, doing everything online, on our phones, on our tablets, on our laptops. I want to be clear that this isn't an anti-digital, anti-device, anti-screen time rant. We want to be realistic. Our digital lives are here to stay. In fact, they're likely going to expand and grow. It would be an exercise in exhaustion to attempt to keep the young people in our lives completely and totally offline. But there's a difference between allowing young people unfettered access to discords, game chats, and online media, and giving age-appropriate, safe access to digital spaces. Think of it like abstinence-only education. It doesn't really work because young people are going to engage in these activities either with or without the important safety information that they need. So isn't it better if we equip them with safe boundaries and skills than to just hope that they'll never ever chat with a stranger over a Discord, or that they'll never accidentally encounter violent sexual imagery online, right? We want to prepare them for that. And here's why this is especially important. There are risks and the potential for real harm in digital spaces, especially for youth. Image-based sexual abuse and sextortion, while not new kinds of violence, are on the rise with the growing use of digital and online spaces. So our goal is not to scare anyone, but rather to equip community members with real knowledge, tools, and supports for keeping young people and ourselves safe from the growing issues of online violence and abuse. So how did we get here? How was it that WCASA decided to make a toolkit in the first place? Here's a brief timeline and overview of how we got to today. So in early 2025, we learned about Braden Bone, a 15-year-old boy from Marathon County here in Wisconsin, who died by suicide after being abused online via sextortion. His death was a tragedy that was 100% fully preventable. His family didn't even know that he was enduring online sexual abuse. In the meanwhile, WCASA and DOJ were meeting to discuss the growing needs for both survivors and providers around the issue of sextortion. So I'd like to take this opportunity to give a huge shout out to our wonderful colleague at DOJ, Liana Lishka, the VAWA administrator with Wisconsin DOJ. She provided us with a tremendous amount of information and insight into the matter of sextortion, including pointing us in the direction of some of the best resources available to communities. So we knew we wanted to address the issue of sextortion with our membership so that the prevention team eventually went on to set a goal for compiling an easy-to-use one-pager resource for SASPs. We want it to be useful for survivors, for community members, right? But as we dove further and further into developing this one-pager, it became clear very rapidly that a simple resource on sextortion was not going to be sufficient to give this issue the attention and context that it necessitates. In fact, before we knew it, we were in the process of researching and designing a comprehensive toolkit dedicated to both the prevention and service to survivors of image-based sexual abuse, including sextortion. So, ta-da! That is how we ended up with tackling a lot more than just our intended one-pager project. That is how we got the Navigating Digital Safety Toolkit. And as we continued to work on this, we found that there was increasing relevancy in this subject matter. In fact, it was a little bit unnerving that as the resource and the training were under development, we kept encountering headlines about online predation against youth being groomed and manipulated into sextortion, or about reprehensible use of AI to create child sexual abuse imagery. It was like everywhere we turned, we had another reminder that this issue is only growing in scale and complexity, and thus there's really a growing need for robust supports and resources. So looking further into the toolkit, as I mentioned, it offers a high-level overview. I want to make sure that I'm on the right page. Yes, okay. Looking further into the toolkit, as I mentioned, it offers a high-level overview of image-based sexual abuse with special attention given to sextortion. It also provides resources and support information for survivors and anyone wishing to better understand the issues related to image-based sexual abuse, be they caregivers, providers, or young people. So this is a toolkit that we hope everyone will find useful. As for how it can be used, our goal with the toolkit is to provide insight and context on the issues pertaining to image-based sexual abuse, especially sextortion. So please use it to grow your capacity in understanding, in prevention, and responding to the sexual exploitation of young people. So whether you're an advocate, a caregiver, or a young person, the toolkit is there to offer important information on practicing digital safety, preventing abuse, and getting support if and when such abuse does happen. So let's get into the mechanics of the toolkit itself. What's inside? So here are the topics covered just at a glance. So there's an intro to the toolkit itself. We cover what it is, how to use it, why it was created. There's a list of important terms and quick facts, a compiled list of resources on how to prevent digital image-based sexual assault and sextortion, a section dedicated to digital citizenship, which explores how to engage on the internet safely, a section dedicated to digital consent, which is all about understanding and applying concepts of consent on the internet, a section on media literacy, which centers knowledge and skills for understanding and responding to media that we see in the online and digital world, survivor advocacy and content removal, the section dedicated to responding to the non-consensual creation and distribution of intimate images, and last but far from least, suicide prevention, which shares resources and considerations for the impact of image-based sexual abuse. Within each section, you can expect to find main content, the meat or potatoes of a given section. So for the first section, image-based sexual assault and sextortion, you'll find 3 pages outlining important concepts, facts, and terms related to these issues. I'll be diving into these specifics momentarily. Each subject matter also comes with a list of resources. We've done our best to catalog the tools and supports available to professionals, caregivers, survivors, and youth so that you don't have to do all the searching yourself, right? It will be there laid out for you depending on the audience and the need. And if you need further assistance in trying to determine if the resource is right for you, if you don't mind clicking Megan, we have these handy dandy color-coded banners to let you know, is this resource for kids, teens, parents, caregivers, and families, or providers? Okay, so now let's get into those proverbial meat and potatoes that I spoke about earlier. Let's jump into the terms. What is image-based sexual abuse? In short, it's an umbrella term to refer to sexual abuse facilitated via media, be that images or videos, and committed specifically through technology or online. The imagery can be real or digitally created with tools like generative AI. Because there are multiple ways to commit IBSA, image-based sexual abuse, there are several terms to refer to the varying kinds of violence. So knowing that it's an umbrella term that covers many kinds of abuse, please use the chat for a moment or come off mute to indicate any specific kinds of IBSA that you know of off the top of your head that you might be familiar with. And if you're not sure, I'm happy to start. Deepfakes, thank you, Mo. Sextortion, yes, absolutely. Two great examples to get us started. So, going through some of these different kinds of examples or these different types of IBSA, non-consensual distribution of intimate images. What does that mean? That's a mouthful, right? This term refers to the collection, posting, swapping, or sharing of sexual and intimate images, including videos of someone without their consent. Non-consensual distribution can be done with the intent to shame and punish the person in the images. So now time for a really quick pop quiz. What do you think the more common term for NDII is? Any guesses? The non-consensual distribution of intimate images. Is there a more common term that we might be using in our everyday vernacular to refer to that?
Or maybe that we're not, but that we hear other people use.
Thank you, Connor. Yes. So I'd say that I've seen and know the term revenge porn is used way more frequently than NDII, right? And I can appreciate why that is. NDII is technical, it's jargony, it's long. People outside of our field are more likely to understand and know what we mean when we use the term revenge porn. But we want to avoid using this term. Can anyone in the chat share on chat or come off mute to tell me why they think that is? What's wrong with the terminology revenge porn? Any guesses? Perfectly said, Michaela. Michaela shared in the chat that porn makes it seem consensual. Exactly. Revenge porn is a harmful way to refer to NDII for several reasons, right? It minimizes the violation and the abuse of the act. Someone's intimate images are not inherently pornographic, and labeling the non-consensual sharing of such images as revenge also places blame on the victim, as if they've done something wrong to merit the violation. So let's do our best to stop using that term and hopefully to correct others that we hear using it. All right, so next up, another example of IBSA we have is child sexual abuse material. This is also a broad term that refers to any visual depiction of sexually explicit conduct involving a minor, so a person 18 years old or younger, a person younger than 18 years old. For another pop quiz, what is the more common layman's term for child sexual abuse material? Anyone have any guesses? Yes, absolutely, Caitlin. You're spot on. It is often referred to as child porn. So in the similar vein of NDII and revenge porn, we often hear CSAM referred to as child porn. Child pornography is unfortunately still a legal definition and is used in charging perpetrators in the US. But children do not choose to be sexually abused, and evidence of the harm, be it images or videos, is not the same thing as pornography, which is a term defined as adults engaging in erotic behavior, right? In pictures, videos, writing, intended to cause sexual excitement. So the term child porn erases the abusive and exploitive nature of the material's creation and its distribution. It implies compliance on the part of the child victim and therefore legality on the part of the abuser. It also suggests that children have full agency in the creation of the material when in fact they were suffering horrific sexual abuse. So again, we don't want to use this term. All right, it is best practice to use the full term child sexual abuse material out of respect for survivors and to avoid minimizing the abuse committed against them. You can also use the acronym CSAM if that's easier. Again, I know it's jargony and it's long, but out of respect for survivors, we really want to commit to those best practices. Next up, I have deepfakes, which I know Mo already named as an example. So this term refers to using someone's likeness to create sexual photos or videos of them without their consent, either by altering existing imagery of that person or using technology like AI to fabricate fake but convincing imagery of them. So some may believe that because deepfakes are artificially created, they're less harmful to survivors. However, deepfakes are just as traumatizing and abusive as other forms of IBSA. We also have video voyeurism. This term refers to capturing intimate or private photos and recordings of a person without their knowledge and consent. So this can include using one's phone camera to secretly film others in a public changing room or in a bathroom, or capturing images of someone's private parts by upskirting or downblousing. And last but certainly not least, we have sextortion, which we are going to dive into a little more deeply in the next few slides. So we're going to start with this brief video from Thorn, which is one of the resources that we often highlight throughout the toolkit to better understand what sextortion is.
Okay, so you did a thing. You sent a picture of yourself with no clothes on. Something you thought wouldn't be shared. And in a polite society, cats wear clothes, right? Anyway, seemed like a good idea at the time, but now things have gone wrong, terribly wrong. Maybe you shared the picture with someone you loved and trusted, but after a while, things weren't so friendly. Or they said they'd help you become a star, but they just wanted to use you. Or maybe you met someone online and they really seemed to understand you, but then it got weird, and it turned out to be someone totally different. Now the person you shared the pic with is demanding more and threatening to tell. That's sextortion. Yep, that's a thing. The perpetrator relies on you feeling ashamed and keeping quiet. But they are the ones who should be ashamed. What they are doing is wrong, and it's never too late to find your voice to ask for help, or too early to reach out to your friends to tell them you'll be there no matter what. In fact, you can stop sextortion before it starts by talking about it now. With support, you can do anything, and you can focus on the important business of being cats. So tell your closest friends today you've got their back no matter what.
Okay, I appreciate that clip outlines what can be a really overwhelming and scary experience for a survivor in a more lighthearted and calming, really grounded way of, hey, we've got you, there's support out there. So as outlined in the clip, sextortion is one of the many types of image-based sexual abuse. And while it's not a new form of abuse, it's unfortunately on the rise. The term sextortion combines sex and extortion and is a serious form of online sexual abuse and exploitation. It broadly refers to the act of blackmailing a person by using their intimate and sexual images against them. This can be done using any platform with messaging features, including apps, social media, games, forums, Perpetrators of sextortion make contact with another person to victimize and then work towards obtaining sensitive photos of that person. To do so, perpetrators may use a fake name and identity to befriend the victim and groom them over time into sharing intimate photos. Use coercion to pressure the victim into sharing their intimate images. Or hack the victim's personal devices or accounts and steal their intimate images. Once perpetrators secure the intimate photos, they begin to shame and manipulate the victim by threatening to share the images online or with the victim's friends and family. They may demand money, sexual acts, or more photos from the victim. Unfortunately, perpetrators are unlikely to stop once the abuse has started and once they have received their demands. Instead, an insidious cycle of extortion continues. So victims can feel trapped by this cycle and may be too fearful or embarrassed to reach out for help. While anyone can be a victim of sextortion, young people, especially those who are LGBTQ, are particularly vulnerable. Perpetrators can be online strangers, so this includes hackers from around the world, peers, former romantic partners, or even victim families members. Perpetrators often try to convince their victims that they are somehow responsible for their own victimization. This is completely untrue, right? Just as the video says. It's essential for survivors to know that the abuse of sextortion is never their fault. It's important for everyone to know how to navigate their digital lives safely. So with the boom of technology and an ever-growing online world, we want to ensure that everyone, including young people, have the information they need to confidently and safely participate in digital spaces without fear of experiencing violence. So now a little bit more about sextortion. We know that 1 in 3 victims know their perpetrator offline or in real life. Now, considering the reverse of that, that means that 2/3 of victims do not. So this is what we mean when we say that sextortion is an international issue. You may be surprised to learn that offenders are often, as I mentioned previously, total strangers in another country halfway across the world who successfully hack the victim's personal device or accounts. Continuing with other facts and figures that might surprise you, 1 in 5 victims report being extorted for money. 1 in 6 victims were 12 years old or younger when they first experienced extortion. This happened to really young folks. 81% of threats made towards victims were exclusively online, including social media and direct messages. 52% of victims were currently or previously romantically involved with their perpetrator. 1 in 7 victims report engaging in self-harm as a result of the abuse. 10% of victims reported their perpetrator was a trusted adult. And 20% of teens report having lived experience with sextortion. Taking a pause here, do any of these figures or facts surprise folks? Anything that stands out that either confirms or maybe contradicts a belief or a myth that they might have held about sextortion? Just anything that stands out to you.
The 1 in 6 where victims were 12-year-olds or younger really stands out to me. I guess that one caught me off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Even being in it, my, I guess, misconception was that they were around the 14-year-old mark. So it's good to point that out as we're working on developing some content for a 6th grade presentation on sextortion. We're going into our local schools and talking to all the 6th graders. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mindy. And I see that you are not the only one taken aback by that. Michaela also shared in the chat that it's really unsettling to know that young kids, school-age kids, are also being subjected to this harm. Kelly sharing sad, scary to see 1 in 7 engage in self-harm. Absolutely, right? I really wish, right, that more youth and more folks who are experiencing this knew that support was out there for them, and there was other ways for them to receive support and really to cope and to heal and to move past this. Does not surprise me, but only because of other webinars. Sure, absolutely. I feel like there's growing awareness of this issue. So maybe some of you are coming into this with pretty established knowledge. Same, I would not have been surprised by 12 and older, but the younger definitely surprised me. That also stood out to me. I echo all of you and really being taken aback by how young some of the folks who are being impacted by this are, and what that means for how we are discussing online use, how we are sharing and interacting young people's images on the internet too. I'm a parent to a really young kid, and I won't lie, in creating this presentation, have like gone back and edited some of my social media because I am starting to have feelings about what it means for a young person's digital footprint to be created before they can fully give consent, right? And what does a young person's engagement with the online world look like, and how do we really promote that safety? Okay, well, thank you all for sharing those reflections. We've got one more section before we take our first break. As a prevention coordinator, I would be remiss to not spend some time dedicated to talking about how we prevent sextortion from happening in the first place. All right, so some things that we want you to all keep in mind. Right, there's basic safety steps that we can take, which is promoting smart, safe engagement with online digital platforms. So if we have young people in our lives, whether we're caregivers, educators, advocates, aunties, uncles, right, we can model smart and safe online use. We can set up certain boundaries and rules around online engagement. Setting up your space, right, using rules and boundaries around tech access, right, are the young people in our lives taking their phones into their rooms after 9 p.m. and then we're not seeing them anymore for the night, right, using age-appropriate controls in place for varying tech and platforms, parent controls where possible. We also really want to highlight applying the knowledge that we already have about child sexual abuse at large. So if you're in this field and you're already working in advocacy and prevention, these are concepts you are already familiar with, and we can harness them and apply them to online safety as well. A great place that we'd like to point you to is our 10 core concepts for child sexual abuse prevention. These same ideas and concepts can be applied to how we parent, model, and educate kids on their personal and interpersonal safety. So some principles that we want to highlight in particular: bodily autonomy, right? Teaching young kids from an early age that their body is theirs, what consent really means, healthy sexuality, how to safely explore their sexuality as their identity is growing. Boundaries, teaching young kids about both maintaining and respecting the boundaries of others. Adult responsibility, emphasizing that while we want kids to be smart and safe, it is ultimately on the adults in their lives, be they parents, teachers, or other caregivers, to ensure their safety. Practicing safety and situational awareness. So what does a safe online space look like? What does that feel like? How do we identify it? And having greater information about sexual abuse so that we can spot warning signs sooner and take greater action towards preventing it from happening in the first place. All right, and really quickly, we'll do some resource highlights. So for providers, if you are a prevention educator, this resource, let me pull up my notes here, comes from Common Sense Education, which is a source that you're going to find mentioned a lot throughout the toolkit. It includes 30 lesson plans for internet safety for kids ages K through 12, right? So whether you're an educator, a teacher, prevention advocate, right? This will provide you with scripts for kids of all ages on discussing internet safety with youth in the classroom. also want to highlight this resource for families, also comes from Common Sense Education. This is a series of resources for caregivers and youth titled Family Engagement for Digital Literacy and Wellbeing. So the page includes a host of activities, including a podcast playlist titled Carpool Conversations. Each episode is a short and sweet prompt that is intended to help spark important dialogue between parents and youth about their digital safety. So if you're a parent and you're like, I don't even know how to begin this conversation, guess what? Someone has already come up with some great conversation starters and scripts to get that dialogue started for you. And then last resource I would love to highlight is for kids. I was really excited about this one. This comes from Net Smart Kids, which is a project from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, also known as NECMEC. So designed for kids 11 years old and younger, the site includes a host of interactive resources all about online safety, including games and a full animated video series called Into the Cloud. So if you've got young kids in your life, there is a subset of content specifically designed with them in mind that includes like characters, storylines, games, right? That is really targeted for their age group, super engaging, and imparts important lessons without being scary, right? It uses age-appropriate and engaging tactics to really teach them important lessons about interacting with the internet safely. All right, we've done it. We've made it through the first big section of our training. You are here. We are at our first official break. We would love to give folks
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
We hit it a little bit early, so we just
Okay.
wanted to check in with folks and see if folks want a break before we head into the next section of digital citizenship. We can absolutely take a break, or we can check in with folks in between citizenship and consent and ask if folks want to have a break then. So let us know in the chat if you want the break or if we want to wait and check in later on.
All right, folks saying flexible either way. I think it's on us to make the call. Folks sound really flexible.
All right, we have a let's keep going.
All right, let's do it.
Wonderful. I will check in between citizenship and consent just to check and see how folks are feeling, if we need a break or if we just want to keep going. We just wanted to make sure, this content can feel kind of heavy. We just wanted to make sure that people had a break if they need it. You're also welcome to take breaks yourself if you need that as well. Again, we are recording this, so you can come back if you feel you have missed any information. Alrighty, so let's dig into digital citizenship. This section was actually pretty fun for me to research and find some tools. As all of us, when we were figuring out how we were going to do this toolkit, there's a lot of information out there. And so trying to figure out what is the best resources, the best tools that is out there for you to have conversations with your own kids or to start your prevention education. I am super interested in learning more about Mandy's library on programming on safety and how that is going to go. So we're really excited. Okay, I want to start with a quick little question to see how old you were when you first got access to the internet. It could be through a home computer, a computer at school without having a home computer, a cell phone, a tablet, whatever. However you gained access, what age were you? Feel free to type it in the chat or unmute if that feels better for you.
We've got a variety of answers, Angie. We've got 18, 11, maybe 6, 5 years old back in the 90s. can relate.
Heck
My
yeah.
parents had no idea what they were doing. They're like, sure, Sarah, go for it. 13, 11, 3 or 4, 10.
Wow.
Freshman in high school. Didn't really exist before then. 14, 11. Okay, we are really running the full
We are
spectrum of
all
ages here.
over. We are
Yeah.
all over. I love, Sarah, that you mentioned that your parents didn't really know. Or was that your parents, or were you just talking about the chat?
My own parents had no idea.
Yeah.
They didn't know, bless them. It was the 90s. They didn't know.
Yeah. So I am old. I am older than I look. I was born in the late 70s. So I don't even remember. I'm sure we had access to internet at the school, but I did in high school, like in middle school, no. Um, in high school, I think I had internet on the computers, but I didn't get a home computer until I was 20. And at that point, my mom was like, "Here, have it. It's fine. Whatever. Do with it what you will," right? So I think the point that with this is like we've had people 3-4 years old get access to internet. Someone said in the chat that is young, and to the point that Sarah was talking about, prevention education needs to start sooner, right? With the sextortion becoming an issue, becoming a problem for kids as young as 12, right? And as I said in the chat, we have these prevention conversations and we need to have them sooner than we think, right? Because kids are getting access to the internet at 3 or 4 years old. And just like with sexual assault prevention, right? Well, you're fine, Mike, and you're fine. There's age appropriate conversations. And that's what we really try to find with these tools is how we can have conversations that are appropriate to various different ages, right? And so we have the information, so we know how to talk to these kids, right? Sarah already alluded to this, but just think about all the things that we need and literally use the internet for. We, at this point, really need a computer and the internet to apply for jobs. This connection that we need and value with other people, the social connection, using the internet for GPS, for navigation purposes, for cooking. People might not store recipes, the old school way of pen and paper anymore. Banking, right? We do a lot of our banking on the internet. The point is the internet is readily available and smartphones make it accessible to younger and younger kids as we talked about with the age that we are accessing the internet. As I said, I'm old. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club in Janesville when I was an undergrad. I loved that job. It was amazing and wonderful to get connected to so many kids and do programming and all of that. And I remember one particular Christmas, this was probably, I don't even remember what year, but this was an 8-year-old child. She came to me after Christmas break and was, Miss Angie, I got a brand new cell phone for Christmas, a brand new iPhone. And in my head, I'm thinking, you're 8 years old. You're 8 years old and you have a smartphone in your hands, and then you can do all of these things with it, right? So that was a very eye-opening experience, being someone who didn't have access to the internet until I was well into adulthood. And how the internet changed from when I first started it to when this 8-year-old child had their own smartphone. And again, this is absolutely why we need to teach others, especially young children, how to engage on the internet in a safe and responsible way. So what is digital citizenship? So defined, digital citizenship is the responsible, ethical, and safe use of technology, digital tools, and the internet as a whole. It involves understanding how to navigate online environments respectfully. It talks about protecting our personal data, practicing good digital etiquette, and engaging positively to create a healthy digital community. So there are some key components of digital citizenship, and they include just general safety and security, protecting our personal information, using secure passwords, and understanding digital footprints. And I'll go into some of these more in depth as we go on. Another component is responsibility and ethics. So talking to kids about practicing empathy in a digital space, avoiding cyberbullying and respecting others' privacy and boundaries. Another aspect is critical thinking. So really evaluating the online information, avoiding the spread of misinformation and disinformation, and understanding digital law, which is understanding copyright, etc. That one was a little bit difficult for me. There's copyright law is reading like stereo instructions, right? Like it's complex, and I'm still not 100% sure I know exactly what all the little symbols mean. And digital wellness is another component, and that's maintaining a healthy balance between online and offline life. So being just, you'll hear it within the digital citizenship conversation about being a good digital citizen. And that means acting with kindness and integrity in all of the digital interactions that we have with other people, and just engaging online in general. So one of the things that you might have noticed is a very similar talking points with social emotional learning. And it really is, when we think about it, that digital citizenship is emotional learning in a digital age. We're taking the basic tenets of kindness, empathy, respect, understanding, and moving that onto and into our digital interactions. So let's just do a quick little basic reminder about what social emotional learning is. Again, it's the awareness of others. It's balancing our emotions, engaging with others respectfully, making healthy choices, and using our voice responsibly. So just like social emotional learning, teaching digital citizenship isn't just about keeping kids safe. It's about nurturing that sense of curiosity and understanding while grounding kids in empathy and respect for their online exchanges. This isn't just like a one-off lesson, but it's an ongoing conversation throughout the child's development. Again, it's those age-appropriate conversations about safety, and then teaching a set of skills that grow with each tech innovation. And we've talked about how this toolkit's going to have to be looked at continuously because technology is constantly changing. New apps are developed, right? New ways that people can communicate online are developed. And therefore, we have to understand a whole new set of policies and rules with that. So just like in social emotional learning, oh, sorry, we could go back. Just like with social emotional learning, it's going to be teaching young people to understand each other's feelings. And it really requires that empathy, like I said, to navigate online interactions, such as understanding the impact of cyberbullying or recognizing that there is a real person behind that screen, right? That might be a little bit difficult for young kids to understand that while you are a whole person, the person that you're talking to on the internet is also a whole person with feelings and boundaries. Responsible decision-making, both concepts empower individuals to make ethical, safe, and respectful choices. So this includes evaluating the credibility of information, digital literacy, which Megan goes into great depth on, which will be on Thursday, and then considering the long-term consequences of one's digital footprint. Building resilience. Both of these frameworks together equip young people and individuals and adults just in general with the skills to cope with online negativity and challenges, transforming them into learning experiences. And just like when we're teaching social emotional learning, when we're talking about digital citizenship, adults should be maintaining an open, judgment-free communication zone to support your child or the young person in your life with their ongoing digital development, and then really check in with them regularly. So we've alluded to throughout this whole communication, with this whole presentation, that technology has really changed how we communicate with one another. It's faster, it's more convenient than ever to have interactions with one another. Thinking about talking to someone across the globe when I was a kid and we had pen pals with pen and paper, I would have to wait weeks to hear from them. But now it's easy peasy, right? It's an immediate conversation with someone across the globe. We can use internet tools to have conversations with people in different languages without even having a base understanding of that language. There's instant messaging apps, there's internet forums, there's video apps. This is a video app that we are using to communicate with one another. There's chat rooms, there's comment sections, and there's social media. It's literally everywhere. We can communicate on tablets, computers, and gaming consoles, on smartphones. And a lot of this is pretty recent. A lot of these apps that are on the screen, right, are pretty recent. And the one thing that I have really taken, not the one thing, one of the things that I took from COVID, right, is COVID taught us when we were isolating physically from other people that we can still have healthy connections and we can build relationships and have meaningful connections with people virtually. So it's not all bad. So the internet is really a place of connection. It's really making sure that we are connecting with the people that we care about, meaning that we're connecting with family and friends. It's human instinct to connect with others. Connections, whether positive or negative, can affect our health. So thinking about social connection, it can reduce the risk of disease, lengthen our life expectancy, and strengthen this sense of belonging that we all have. Feeling connection and a sense of belonging in young people is reported to have pretty positive health effects. Higher self-esteem, better physical health, more receptive to supportive relationships, improved attendance at school, improved academic performance, learning, and higher graduation rates, and higher income after graduation. So let's think about the positives of digital and virtual connection. For me, as a disabled person, connecting with my friends and family virtually has been so amazing for keeping up with the comings and goings of our lives, right? Going out to social events can be expensive. Parking or Uber rides, that adds up. And the physicality of physically going to places are all significant barriers for engaging with people. So virtual events really reduce those barriers almost entirely. Another huge benefit to connecting online is reducing social isolation, thinking especially about LGBTQ communities, LGBTQ plus people. So even as a person, even today, existing as an LGBTQ person today can be dangerous with the constant harmful legislation and the increasing societal shame and stigma. Just leaving your house can be harmful. And with our harmful social norms around sexuality and gender, the harm may even be inside the house. So therefore, that digital connection may be the only way for queer youth and adults. That might be the only way that they're able to connect with other queer people and other allies who are supportive. Online interactions are super important for all people, also people who are in rural communities. Finding activities for peers to gather offline that might be very limited, or in smaller towns, the only place that people can connect might be at a bar. That might not be the place that we want to meet people for lots of different reasons. So transportation might also be limited, but the more a person uses these digital devices to connect with, the more a person uses digital devices to connect with one another, the more at risk they are of sextortion or other internet crimes. So primary prevention is needed to prevent any harm from happening in the first place as much as we can. Again, that's why we're here today, right? So as I mentioned before, the way we communicate online is constantly changing. So people are using video games as a way to connect with one another. People are using AI, artificial intelligence, to have full-on conversation. One thing that we also want to stress throughout this whole thing is that the internet isn't always bad. It's a both and situation. We can use the internet for its best qualities, considering social connection and learning, and also being aware that there are some parts of the internet, that some parts of using the internet that are negative and can be dangerous, which is why understanding digital citizenship is an important tool. We need to teach young people as well as adults. Life doesn't come with instructions, right? But we can do our best to make some up as we go along. So I wanted to check in with you to check in and see how comfortable you feel to talk to kids about internet safety. Again, if it feels better to share in the chat, please feel free. You can also unmute and share that way. Or maybe a better way to frame that is, what do you feel the most hesitation about? You can also answer that as well.
This is real. Mo shared, I feel comfortable, but things evolve so rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I agree with that. I used to be a teacher years ago. I have a 12-year-old now. And so a lot of times he'll bring things to me and I go, I'm not sure, we're going to have to figure that one out together. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, what that means, but I'm your safe person to figure that out. And then I'm also navigating these things where Ben wasn't Ben in his phone. Ben was his new girlfriend in his phone. Like they're just so sneaky. And he's only 12.
Yeah.
And I didn't figure that out until the Ben had sent a screenshot, or not a screenshot, a selfie of a girl. And I was like, wait a second. So then my mom PI skills kicked in, but that's only because I read his text messages. And that's something that we do together, but it is tough. So I don't have all the answers, but we'll go through it together and I don't judge him for it.
I love what you said. There's a couple of things that I love what you said. The letting them know that you're a safe person that they can come to when they have questions or concerns. That is absolutely a huge part of just safety in general, right? And a huge part of digital citizenship is letting kids explore, but also knowing that you are a safe person they can come to. And then admitting when we don't have all the answers, right? We get a huge part of our credibility with young people is when you don't pretend to know everything and know that we can learn through this together. I love that.
Lots happening in the chat. More folks saying that they feel comfortable, but sometimes the kids treat it as a joke or they behave as if they already know everything.
Yeah.
What else here? So I think that the most difficult thing for me, this is from Mandy, is just figuring out the best way to frame things so that they can be a conversation in a productive way to still educate on why this stuff is important and can also keep others safe.
Mm-hmm.
Maricela sharing, kids will only take in what they want to hear. And getting into schools can be a struggle for some. I think I'm comfortable. I am not the one that goes into the school, but there's a lot of engagement from schools. There's lots of engagements from school kids. So having sort of mixed opportunities to reach kids and really talk about this, and also trying to meet the kids where they're at, it sounds like, with their own knowledge and their own attitudes. Like
Yeah.
that's a whole other set of skills that I don't know we have time to cover in this presentation, but that's so real.
Yeah, very, 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 very true. Very true. Thank you so much for everyone participating in the chat. I very much appreciate it. All right, moving on to the first component of digital citizenship. So this is positive online behavior. So this is discussing the importance of respect and empathy online, talking about the possible consequences of their online actions and how they can affect others. And the golden rule that we have all grown up on is still applicable to online or digital virtual interactions with others, treating others online how you would like to be treated. I mentioned before that having people behind a screen or talking in your ear, thinking about talking with others on gaming consoles, that can put up a barrier to seeing other people's humanity. We have seen videos online of really disgusting, harmful, gross interactions of other people because not seeing the person's humanity, not seeing the person's face is really an easy way to dehumanize someone. So talking to kids young about how we are our own person and other people online, whether we can see them or not, are also their own people that have thoughts and feelings, and we should be respectful of that. All right, so the next part, I want to focus on contributing positively in digital interactions. So I found this graphic online and I love it. And this can be a way to really have like a simple conversation with young people. Think before you post, or before you post, think. You might see if you want to use other think graphics, you'll see them out there with different acronyms, with the same acronym, right? But different, like what the T and the H and the I mean. I like this one as it comes at it from a more positive aspect, from a more strength-based approach in a way. So talking to kids before you post, T is it true? Is the information that you are sharing online, is it true? Is it accurate information? If it's not accurate information, really think about why you might want to post. And if it's not accurate information, what could the consequences be to posting this? So the H, is it helpful to others? Will the post be something that others find helpful for whatever situation they might be going through? So thinking about I, is it inspiring? Will this uplift people with happiness and joy? Obviously, there are going to be times where we're not posting things that are all happy and joy, right? Because life is full of ups and downs. But in certain instances, if it's not an inspiring, is it going to be harmful, right? So there's that conversation as well. Is it necessary? Do I absolutely need to post this online? Or can I talk with someone in person if I need something? So thinking about the necessary piece, we are chronically online and we're sharing absolutely everything about our lives. And that might not always be the best way that we engage with other people online. So thinking about before we post, is it absolutely necessary that I post this? Is there someone that I can talk to in my life more directly instead of putting it out into the general internet lands of posting, right? So the K is it kind? Am I posting something that is harmful to other people in any way? So will this hurt someone, whether indirectly or directly? And that I think is a good piece to think about, if this is going to hurt someone directly or indirectly, because both kinds of harm are harmful, right? All right, so the second component of digital citizenship that we're going to be talking about is protecting our personal information online. So as data breaches and identity theft really become more frequent, it really is vital and imperative for us to know how to safeguard our personal information online. So developing this skill is going to reduce the risk of fraud, it's going to protect our privacy, and it's going to reinforce the importance of confidentiality in the internet. So by building this awareness, we're going to be learning to create strong, unique passwords for each account that we use, and understand why personal information should not be shared carelessly online. So again, thinking back to that think graphic, they also gain knowledge of social media privacy settings and how to use them to keep their information secure and out of the public domain. Young people need to know what information that it really is okay to share with others, and what information is more important that we keep private or only to a trusted select group of folks. So at this point, we are probably all super duper sick of creating passwords. There's a meme that I put in this slide that says, I don't know about you, but I don't have any more passwords left in me. And anytime I have to create a new password, I just, ugh, right? But we need to, right? The more we engage in the digital world, we need to be protecting ourselves as much as we can. And so while, again, it's funny, it's unfortunately true that we really have to get over it and create another password with an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a symbol, a number. It has to be 12 characters or 22 characters, right? Like we have to do it. So telling young people and adults the importance of creating a complex password, tips on how to remember them, that is the piece that we all need to take into account, right? Have different ones for different platforms. I know there are probably some of us, myself included, that just because I don't have another password in me, I have the same password for multiple places. That's putting ourselves at risk, right? One thing that we can tell people is that sites shouldn't ever ask you for your password, right? So if you receive an email from, the only thing that popped into my brain is AOL, but that's kind of dating myself, right? That if a site that you're using emails you asking you for your password, that is probably that's absolutely a scam, and to be aware of that, right? So again, creating passwords is a huge part of digital safety, and using a strong amount of passwords as we possibly can, that we have the wherewithal in our soul to create, is super important. All right, the next one, I have another question for you all. What might you need more information on to talk confidently about protecting personal information? So we had like a nice little giggle about the need for the 28, 32-bit, firstborn password, numbers and symbol, DNA sample passwords. But to be honest, understanding the complexity of scams on the internet is still confusing for me as how old am I? 46, 47-year-old person. Like I said, things are constantly changing. We've shared in the chat that things are constantly changing and new scams are being invented, and it's incredibly overwhelming. So if you need more information, where do you think you will need to do more research on to feel more confident to talk about scams and risks online? It's not as simple as the emails that we get asking for money for the prince across the globe, right? Protect my money. Though I still do get those emails. Safe space to use AOL as an example in this. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And it's okay if you don't really know where to begin, right? It's yes, and it absolutely can be scary, right? Not knowing what you don't know, especially when it comes to this, is scary and nerve-wracking. And thankfully, there's so much information. Thankfully, and maybe overwhelmingly, there's a lot of information out there. And even if you are a 46-year-old human being like myself, taking the information from the digital citizenship that is out there around understanding the risks and scams that are out there can be informative for myself as a grown human adult. All right, let's move on to safe online interactions, digital citizenship component number 3. So safe online interactions are going to protect students from many different types of potential harm, including predators, scams, and inappropriate content. The digital aspect of the internet makes it super easy for people to put viruses and bots and things onto our devices where they can steal information very easily. We at WCASA often get emails from fake Kelly asking us to not email or call her back, but to email right away. And it's just really silly how often we get those emails on a regular basis, and how if you're not looking at the email address of where that scam is coming from, you can then become involved in that scam. We're all probably super familiar with the emails from royalty far, far away, asking us to hold their millions of dollars. So teaching kids and adults to notice scams is a huge part of this, because we all could use $1 million, right? We could, I don't think anyone would turn $1 million away, but knowing that it's not going to be as easy as taking a prince's money and holding it in your bank account for them, yeah. Again, we're not going to be able to stop all the types of viruses and scams. As we've talked about here, new things are going to come up all of the time. They're going to create software that is going to make it even more easy for people to get scammed. But understanding the basics is a huge step. Again, the internet is a super easy place to find people who have similar interests and skills as us. But think how easy it is to find people who like the same books, the games that we play, the same music as we do, thinking back to especially those of us who might feel more socially isolated and not have a lot of people in our lives that we can connect with others on, what brings us joy and happiness in our lives. Games, social media, and other online spaces give kids opportunities to meet and chat with others outside the confines of their real life communities. But we really need to take a moment to think about how well do we actually know the people we're meeting and interacting with, right? Well, it is very easy to find community. Thinking back to that slide with the logos of all the social media, not all of them, right? But the main uses of social media. It's super easy to find a community. The virtual aspect makes it easier to hide parts of us or all of us, and may make it more difficult to really get to know people. So while it is a good place to find that source of connection, that virtual aspect does have some negatives, right? Again, it makes it easier to hide parts of us, all of us. It can make it really difficult to really get to know people. So knowing how to interact safely with others online is probably the biggest part of this aspect. So giving people the tools, the skills, and knowledge to engage with other people safely on the internet is a key part of digital safety. So they're going to meet and interact with strangers everywhere on the internet. And this is especially important with people they don't know offline. How well do any of us actually know the people that we're interacting with and meeting with on the internet? We can give them the skills to analyze how well they know the people and interact with on the internet, reflect on what information is safe to share with others, with all types of online friends. Again, thinking back to that THINK acronym, is it necessary for this person who is a stranger to know this particular piece of information about me? Is it necessary for me to share this? We can teach people, especially young people, to recognize these red flags that may come up when we are talking with someone that we don't really know on the internet. So some of the questions that you can be asking and talking to people about online safety is, are they rushing to meet you in person? Is the person that you're communicating with online, are they pressuring you to share personal information that you just don't want to share? Are they not recognizing and respecting your boundaries? That's a piece of that social emotional learning. Are they asking for money or other types of monetary goods? Are they pressuring you to share images that you don't want to share? Are they pressuring you to talk about things you don't want to? And are they asking you to keep things secret? I think there's a lot of parallels between sexual assault, sexual violence offline and online, right? It's that isolating piece that is important. There's stuff happening in the chat that makes me so excited. Bitcoin scams recently creating an Etsy account. I didn't even put the Etsy online thing on, or the logo on there. That's another place too. AI spoofing and mimic voices. Thankfully, in Megan's piece, she talks about media literacy. And as much as we can talk to kids about recognizing that as well. Thank you so much for the chat engagement. That's really great. Thank you. Keep it coming. Okay, so more about knowing how to interact safely with others online. And as folks have shared in the chat, right? Starting these conversations about safety can be scary, especially when we don't feel that we know enough about the subject. And that is why this toolkit is so incredibly important, because there's tools and information for providers and families to start to have a recognition about the issue so they can have these conversations online. We don't want, just like with talking about safety on offline, right? So talking about safety in person, we don't want to scare people to the point where they are afraid to go onto the internet, but we need to prepare them for situations that can potentially be harmful. So a big piece of that is telling young people to trust their intuition, which we'll focus on a little bit more on the next slide. We also need to safety plan with them in a way to have them identify who the safe adults are that they can come to with any concerns. That was also mentioned. And a part of that plan is talking with them about what they should do if someone they are interacting with starts raising those red flags. So I wanted to put this on its own separate slide because this is incredibly important. So when talking to kids about engaging with others online in a safer manner, we should be telling them to trust their instincts or trust their gut, depending on what feels better for you. Use the wording that feels the most appropriate. If they are talking with someone they meet online and they start to feel things, that things are becoming a little bit weird, or their body starts to react in a way that they don't like, then they should trust those feelings. Stop talking to that person and tell a trusted adult in their life. I feel like I need to speed up a little bit. Understanding digital footprint and privacy. So this is how understanding that what we do on the internet can leave lasting traces. The phrase once online, always online, or something like that, that's true, right? Developing this awareness will recognize how our online behavior can influence future opportunities and relationships. When you think about what we post online, Google search for future employers is a thing, and that can come up and really impact future places of employment. And it also involves learning things about privacy settings and the lasting nature of online content. And then also thinking back to that social emotional learning piece, encouraging more thoughtful and responsible digital engagement. So moving on to being mindful of what one shares. For some youth, the internet can seem like a very abstract place. We talked about this earlier before. We may not understand completely that once something is on the internet, that it pretty much is there forever. So thanks to the Wayback Machine, the actual website, we can go back to websites and look at information and images once it's been deleted. There's joy and happiness with sharing stuff and parts of our lives on the internet, but we don't, we want to include people in aspects of our lives. But for some, deciding what to post and when might be a little bit more difficult to ascertain. So talking to kids about the permanency, which might be a little bit more abstract for them to understand, is important. So what happens when a young person comes to you with concerns about an online interaction? So reassuring that people, both young, both adults, right, that you can be a safe person to come to when they do encounter someone who is causing them harm in any way. That's very important. The same principles of being a trusted adult or a person for non-digital abuse or harm, they really apply here as well. So when having conversations about navigating the digital world safely, telling them that if they get nervous, if they just feel weird, if they're asked inappropriate things, asked to share more private details, etc., whatever it is, that they can always come to you. And the main thing for us, if we are a trusted adult, is to always act and react in a non-judgmental manner if or when someone comes to you. All right, so this is kind of a softball question. So what percentage do you think of teens have access to a device?
$95, $99.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Megan. We can go to the next slide. Perfect. So this research, again, shows 95%. So whomever said 95%, you get a cookie. Again, think of all the things we use and need the internet for: jobs, connection, navigation, cooking, baking. The internet is everywhere. Smartphones are going to make it accessible all over the place. This is kind of an easy question to answer, but it is worth really thinking about to really understand why having these conversations of digital citizenship with people is so important. So the next piece is balancing the screen time. So this is maintaining that healthy balance of screen time to keep up is really essential for our physical and mental well-being. Too much time on devices can contribute to the eye strain. So think about the physical pieces as well. Disrupted sleep and decreased physical activity. So encouraging a balance between digital engagement and offline experiences is going to really support a healthier lifestyle and just overall well-being. Through developing this skill, we're going to really build a healthy technology habits by maintaining their time online and making space for offline activities. This includes setting clear limits on screen use to ensure that it really doesn't interfere with sleep or meaningful in-person activities. We're gonna, yeah, we'll watch this. I know we're gonna be running out of time here.
Hi, I'm Dr. Megan Moreno. I'm a pediatrician who specializes in adolescent health. I'm sure it's no surprise to you that more than 90% of adolescents and young adults use social media, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can impact your mental health. Let's start with the positive. You can use your accounts for connection with friends and family. You can learn about museums and parks and faraway places. You can even get tips about cooking and gardening and other hobbies that you might be interested in. These can be really positive activities for your mental health. But social media can also have some downsides. Using it too much can mean pushing away activities and people that you should encounter in your offline life. Social media can expose you to content that's violent, dangerous, or inaccurate. And for some adolescents, social media use can lead to body image problems and even contribute to eating disorders. So an important thing to think about is how you use your social media. Are you just scrolling and lurking, or do you post your own content and like and interact with other people's content? Studies have shown that teens who use social media in this more active way are less likely to experience depression symptoms. So let's talk about steps that you can take to keep your social media use positive. First, take a good look at your social media use, what types and how often. Second, think about how you use social media. What do you like about it? Have you seen or had experiences that you don't really like? You can always talk to your parents or other trusted adults about these experiences. And third, take some breaks. Put away your phone during family time. If possible, keep your devices out of your bedroom and make sure that you get enough sleep. And remember, if you're ever concerned about your mental health, you can always talk to your pediatrician.
I would say always talk to your pediatrician. That might not be accessible to a lot of people. This is an American Academy of Pediatrics video. I like this video because we know that social media use might not ever go away completely. We really need to talk to young people that balance is really important, that there are good aspects of social media, but also recognize when it starts to take over. So that's why I wanted to share this video. So ensuring digital usage doesn't harm physical or mental health. Again, we use social media for so many different things and just keeping up with life in general, but we need to become aware when it takes over. Use of social media really takes over and starts to become a negative part of our life. So really thinking about doom scrolling, that is something that I do quite a bit. So I need to fight my algorithm as much as possible sometimes when I am engaging on social media to really remind myself, oh, I need to start looking at joy, about happy stuff. So I need to retrain that algorithm. A large part of social media's harms on young people is our comparing ourselves to other people's lives. So we absolutely need to remember that people typically only post things on social media that make them look good. They choose the best images, they use the editing apps that make them look best. Usually, unless people are posting constantly online, they feel they're only sharing the highlights of their lives, right? So comparing our lives to someone else's life isn't something that we really should be doing. I really like this graphic up at the top, this cartoon. It is an article from teens at a high school. I don't remember which high school. It's not in Wisconsin, I don't think. But it's talking about how, from teens talking to other teens about harmful self-obsession with social media. So that is something that you can click on and look at to help really understand and talk to kids about getting that balance between social media use and engaging with life offline. So another component is contributing to the digital community. So making positive contributions to digital communities encourages us to use our online presence in a responsible and purposeful manner. So whether we are advocating for important causes, raising awareness, or collaborating on global initiatives, students, young people are going to be empowered to become active and constructive members of the digital world, but that can also contribute to the offline world as well. By developing this positive contribution to the digital community, we're going to be learning to create, again, that THINK acronym, creating meaningful content such as blogs, videos, artwork that shares our ideas in a really thoughtful and respectful way. We can also engage in online communities and projects that are designed to create positive change, including environmental efforts or other like social justice initiatives. So again, creating content that has positive impact. we are thinking about using our voice in a way that is going to create that positive group. So connecting with friends and family, using the digital tools that are out there mindfully, being engaged in our online communities. There's a lot of activism that is happening out there on the internet that can benefit communities in real life. Don't assume that everyone believes what the loudest voices say. I feel like that is something that we all need to remember, that the loudest voices aren't always going to be the most correct, and make your voice heard, right? Making our thoughts, our feelings heard as much as we can. So the next slide is a resource that I really love. It is a website for youth by youth. So it's based out of the University of Michigan, but it's for people all across the United States to voice their opinions on issues that are important to them. So absolutely, this website, Hear My Voice Now, is a great example of using the digital tools to start to do some good, to feel that young people's voices are heard. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'm not the most, to be perfectly honest, I'm also not the most versed on understanding copyright and licensing. But the biggest aspect of this is if we're using someone's work, recognizing that the thought, the effort that they put into creating that work, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's an article, whether it's a research paper, that type of thing, right? I grew up in the age of using encyclopedias and the card catalog to create my reports for school. I'm not even versed in all of the apps that are out there for young people to do their homework, to create papers and things. It's so much easier now to do that type of research, but making sure that we're talking to young people about the importance of giving credit for other people's work. Again, I grew up in the age of encyclopedias and Ask Jeeves. That was my first online search engine before I used Google. So we've come a long way, baby, right? Also talking to them about the use of ChatGPT and using that to do your work. That is also a huge part of this conversation. And there's other apps, there's other AI apps and websites beyond ChatGPT. So part of digital citizenship and being a good digital citizenship, a good digital citizen is understanding the concepts of intellectual property. Again, I'm not going to pretend I understand the ins and outs of this either, but just the basics of giving credit to other people's work that you are using and avoiding plagiarism is an easier concept to understand. We don't have time for this video on the next slide, but it is a good kind of like a good basic and understanding of how to respect intellectual property. So I did want to include that. And then there's also a great graphic to help us understand what copyright really means and how and when we can use other people's words and other people's music, other people's artwork, that type of thing, and whatever it is that we are creating. Okay, so some highlights. I know that Sarah talked about some prevention resources before. So there is one resource, again, that Sarah mentioned, but digital safety resources is a great one. Be Internet Awesome is the gist of this. I love Be Internet Awesome. It's a wonderful website that is for providers and parents and families to teach young people about digital safety and digital citizenship. It's one of my favorites. There's worksheets, there's videos, there's games, and there's articles. I do want to highlight this one because I When I was researching this tool, I saw, oh, free stuff. And I'm a free person. I love to get stuff for free. I am not ashamed of that. And I was like, oh, this could be something that I could share with programs. So I highly recommend clicking the link or scanning the code to get like what felt like a 40-pound box of all of these tools. Like there's magazines, there's worksheets that you can copy that you can use with particularly younger people. So maybe elementary age youth or middle school youth. I feel like that could also be helpful. But also teenagers might not be above this as well, right? So highly recommend clicking on that to get that.
And I
And
want to
then
highlight that, someone mentioned earlier the difficulty of getting into the schools sometimes. The schools might be very open to you doing something on internet safety as a way to get in the door, and then you can start talking um, about sexual violence and gender inclusion, that sort of thing, on top, building off of this initial conversation. This might be a safer topic to them at first.
absolutely be all sneaky like, right? And then the next slide is a resource from Safety Net Project. It is a newer resource that came out after we published the tool. It is a Safety Net Project is a project of the National Network to End Domestic Violence. This resource is divided into 3 sections. Segment 1, how technology impacts youth. Segment 2, healthy relationships in teens. Segment 3, prevention and response for educators and service providers. And I love that this resource is also offered in Spanish. And then digital citizenship curriculum from Common Sense Education. This whole curriculum is great. It breaks it down into the different concepts of digital citizenship, and it can be filtered by by grade level as well. There are worksheets, there are videos, there's a whole heap of information about digital citizenship here. And the last resource is, again, a website from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And it is a resource for families to create a media plan for balance and health in accessing social media. You do need to create an account for this, but it is free. It's a great tool to use to get the family involved, right? To get everyone involved in this plan and how we can engage on the internet safely while balancing our mental health. Okay, so we have half an hour left. So I wanted to check in and see if folks needed a break. If so, we could probably take a 3-minute break. Otherwise, we can keep moving. So we did promise to check in. So I do want to honor that. So let us know.
We do have one person saying, let's go ahead and do the break. So yeah, go ahead. We'll take 3 minutes and come back at 12:36.
See you soon. Okay, everyone. Welcome back. You know, that was a quick little intermission here. But if we could come back, that would be wonderful. Okay, so the last portion for today, we're going to be talking about digital consent. So understanding and applying the concepts of consent digitally. We could go to the next slide, Megan. I have a question for you all. Thank you, Megan. How do you think digital consent differs from consent in real life? So if you could share in the chat or unmute yourself, how do you think digital consent differs from consent in real life? And the word digital is becoming more and more difficult for my mouth to say. Yeah. You got it. Not by much, right? Not by much.
There is a strange difference in perception of it, though. Like my husband and I did our taxes recently using an app, and I was like reading all of the consent things, informed consent things in terms of service, those kinds of things, because, this is kind of important. We're giving them our financial information. We're having them file our taxes on our behalf. And my husband was like surprised that I was taking the time to actually read those, because we're so used to just being like, well, you can click the box. It doesn't make you scroll to the bottom anymore. And like, that's not the point, actually.
I feel like they do that on purpose too, because they know 99.9% of the people in the world don't click the terms and conditions. All right. Yes. So not much, if at all, is different when thinking about consent in real life and consent digitally. But before we talk specifically about how to get consent virtually, let's have a brief little overview of what just consent in general means. So Mia Schachter, a leader I admire in the consent field, defines consent as an ongoing, practical approach to communication, a mode of checking in with yourself and others about limitations, capacity, resources. Consent is a practice of deep listening, not just for words, but also for body language, gaze, prosody, a big word, which basically is how you say what you say with your voice, and other forms of often unconscious information, and acting based on all that information and being willing to adapt to it as opposed to continuing with your intention, goal, or motive. And that is kind of like a long definition to consent, but we tend to minimize consent and think that it is just a one-time thing, right? But consent is more complex than that. It really is a conversation. It is a spectrum. It is a way for us to explore who we are and what we want in a safe manner. It's also a way to have our friends, our partner, our partners, our families, our colleagues, whomever, respect and understand us as a person, what we want for our life and for our bodies. Consent applies to more than just romantic or sexual situations, and therefore conversations can and should be had at all ages. Just like conversations of digital citizenship, we should be talking about this sooner than we really think. Basically, the end result is we want to create a culture of consent where conversations are had all the time in all types of different situations. So culture, thinking about what culture means, it's a shared set of beliefs, values, and customs, behaviors, and artifacts that define a group, society, or organization. It includes language, traditions, religion, and social habits that are passed down through generations, shaping how people perceive and interact with the world. It acts as a collective programming of the mind. So imagine if that collective programming of the mind included a culture of respect, a culture of consent, where people understood their own boundaries, desires, and wishes, and then therefore understood and respected other people's desires, wishes, and boundaries, and rejection, and when that comes up. So due to the increased use of the internet as a means of peer communication, we need to teach people about what digital or online consent is. It should be, again, included in all conversations and education involving consent for all ages. The basic premise of consent, again, is an agreement to do something or permission for something to happen. So when the situation happens, in person, we have social cues such as body language, facial expressions, tone of voice that can help us understand if and when we do have consent. In online interactions with others, will make it difficult, will make it more difficult to understand these cues that help us know how people are feeling. So the internet, as I mentioned before, makes it easier to avoid seeing other people's humanity. The concept that screen names belong to a human might be a little bit more abstract, especially for younger people, which is why we need to take that spectrum of consent into our digital experiences and situations. So with the foundations of digital citizenship, we are teaching young people how to engage with others with respect and a healthy curiosity. So which is super helpful background information to have when talking to young people about the potential risks of sharing nude images with their partners. The I ask for digital consent from the NSVRC, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, is a great resource to help to have conversations of digital consent. When texting with others, we can talk to teens about understanding that even though technology connects us 24/7 with people, we need to be understanding that your partner or your friend isn't always going to respond immediately with our texts. We can talk to teens about asking their partner how much they want of their relationship shared on social media. So simply asking the question, do you mind if I share this video or image or the date that we had online? The sexual and romantic parts of relationships that happen in person will also naturally develop online, which is why we can't have a conversation about digital consent without talking about consent when sexting. So we know that teens are going to explore this, so it is responsible to have this conversation with them and give them the information, no matter how awkward or nervous we might feel in having these conversations. So sexting is sharing nude images, videos, or messages through texts or other messaging platforms. So using the internet to have conversations online, including sexting, removes some of those pressures and fears of talking about the relationship, talking about our feelings, talking about what we want. It's going to remove those pressures and fears. Some of those fears that it removes is the fear of getting an STI or a sexually transmitted infection. And also teens can explore themselves and what they like, what they don't like while in the comfort of their homes. This should include conversations of consent and boundary setting. So letting teens know without shame or stigma if they are sexting with others, that sending these types of messages can have unintended negative consequences. If they are sharing images or others, even if it's of themselves, that's illegal to do if they are under the age of 18. Megan will talk a little bit more about this, and in the toolkit, there's more information about the specific state laws in Wisconsin. So please do check the toolkit. We can also remind the young people in our lives that our digital footprint, again, it remains. So if we send an image out into the world, it can be very difficult to get that image removed. So another part of this is explaining that they should never send unwanted texts. And if they don't want to do sexting with others, that is also totally okay to not. Yes, I saw there was, I put links in here to all of the resources that are on the slide. So this link down at the bottom will take you to that printable, this printable I ask for digital consent form.
About this when we talk about responding to non-consensual distribution of images online. But it's also really important to make it clear that while, yes, it is illegal for teens to sext, that if they are in a situation where their images are being shared without their consent, it's very important to make clear that they should seek help and that they're not going to be in trouble.
Thank you, Megan. Yes, we will be sharing the slides with folks. Okay, so there is an interesting piece of consent digitally that I would like to talk about, and that is sharenting. This is focusing on parents posting the content of their children online. So what is sharenting? This term was new to me when I was researching this. It is literally just combining the words sharing and parenting combined. And this practice includes posting photos, videos, or other personal stories about their kids. And it's often revealing their daily lives or other milestones on the internet. Again, we use the internet for a lot of good and wonderful things. Social media is how a lot of adults with children communicate with their families, with their friends about their lives. So it is convenient to share all of the family happenings in one place for your friends or families to see. We also want to share the things that are humans in our lives, that we're so proud of them for what they're doing. Look at how amazing my kid is. There's a lot of joy. There's a lot of happiness in that, right? So I'm not here to say that all posts of your children are bad and should stop, but it becomes a question of concern when these happenings are personal and private moments of your children being posted on the internet, especially when the children are preteens or teenagers. We know that as we grow up, we become more private, and teenagers especially become more private. Thinking about family channels and YouTube, the family videos on TikTok, right? They are sharing extremely private moments of their children for views and money. And it can be extremely damaging to those kids to have very little privacy and essentially perform for the camera every single day of their lives. We have heard from those kids who are now adults that their childhood was essentially non-existent because it was really a reality TV show. So that is obviously an extreme case of sharenting, but it does help us see that that caution is needed. As we have learned from digital citizenship, our footprint on the internet is essentially forever. So what we post on the interwebs is there, even if our settings are set to the strictest privacy settings. So while we are teaching our youngsters about digital consent, a part of that conversation should be modeling that same behavior, asking the young people in your life if they have any issues or with us sharing images or videos of them on the internet. So again, it's what we post on the internet is out there forever. We also share more than we think when we post images and videos online. We unintentionally might be sharing private information, or we might be unintentionally sharing the location of where we are when we post things, especially pictures and videos on the internet. And that is information we might normally wouldn't want to be shared. Once an image is posted, it is out there. We don't always have control over who has access to that image or video. And we certainly don't have control over what they do with that image or video. So a huge part of modeling consent could be telling your friends and family to not post pictures or videos of your kids, plain and simple. Make sure that your privacy settings are set to friends only, and check the tagging feature. So essentially who can, if they're posting a video of a joint outing, you can be tagged in that picture or video. Make sure that that tagging feature is off. Again, modeling the consent is asking young people in your life if they have any issues with us sharing images or videos of them on social media. So some resources that I want to highlight is an article about how we can model consent for our kids. So this tool is from Raising Digital Citizens on how we can model consent, specifically around posting stuff online. This is a resource, an article from Internet Matters, talking about online consent and image sharing. It is a website that has articles as well as videos that are going to be helpful for parents to have the conversations with their kids. Sarah talked about Thorne earlier. This is just a great resource in general, but this resource specifically talks about consent. This can be especially helpful for parents and families as well as providers. It has guides about talking about consent online, as well as like a walkthrough example conversation. This is a resource that has lesson plans, videos, activities specifically for younger kids to talk about online consent. Ooh, that is all we have for today. I'm glad that we have a little bit of time to have for reflection, whether that is questions, comments, questions about Thursday, whether it's stuff that Shara talked about before. So how are folks feeling? Thank you, Mandy. That was very kind. We put a lot of information. We put a lot of resources and tools. So please don't feel overwhelmed. We intentionally did it in sections so you can come at it wherever, right? You can click to the digital consent one day, and then the next week you can go to the media literacy section.
I'm going to put all of our emails in the chat as well. This obviously goes for the content on Thursday too, but please feel free to reach out to us if you need any support in navigating these resources. If you have any feedback about the toolkit, we're happy to hear that as well. Yeah.
We so appreciate your participation, your presence, the questions you had, and just sharing your input and experiences, both in what this has looked like for you in your personal life and in your work. And thank you all for the appreciation. That means a lot.
We will see you on Thursday at 11. Megan is going to be talking about advocacy just in general when it comes to this, talking about image removal resources, and I will be talking about the suicide prevention piece that we should be talking about when it comes to sextortion and just internet-based sexual violence. We will see you then.
See you in 2 days, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, folks.